In today's video, I am going to be unboxing two new ant species that I have never before featured on the channel. Both of these ant species are pretty rare, and they are some of the most beautiful ants that I've ever seen. If you think that I deserve it, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. When I reach 5,000 subscribers, I will make a full ant room tour video that features every single ant species that I own, including ones that I've never before featured on the channel. I hope that you all enjoyed today's video, and with that said, let's get into it. This first species that we are unboxing today is a colony of Camponotus fragilis. These ants are much smaller than your typical Camponotus ant species, but they have vibrant orangish yellow workers and the queen looks stunning. This colony has 2 workers currently, and it looks like there was a third worker that died during shipping, most likely due to that moldy mealworm being in the test tube. The very first thing that I'm going to do with this colony is pull out that mealworm, because it's a hazard for the ants and it should not have been fed such a large piece, and it should have been taken out much earlier. I am also going to remove that dead worker, and this will help free up their space a little bit so that their test tube does not start to mold. Currently this colony has 1 larva and the queen does not have any eggs laid at the moment. Now that this colony's test tube is free once again, I'm going to feed them a small drop of nectar and see if it will give the queen more energy to start laying eggs, and hopefully provide the workers with some of the nourishment that they need. You can see that once the worker notices that there was something in the test tube, she immediately grabs the larva and places it to safety. But after she does that, she immediately notices the honey and starts to drink it. As the worker drinks, her gaster starts to expand, and then she starts to turn the same color as the honey that she's drinking. She is drinking as much nectar as she possibly can, so that she can store it and then use it to feed the rest of the colony in the future. I ended up underestimating how much honey that this worker could store, so I ended up giving them a second drop right afterwards. Once the worker has stored as much honey as she possibly could, she goes to her sister and starts to feed her. Ants have 2 stomachs, a personal stomach and a social stomach, and here you can see this ant taking honey from the social stomach and giving it to the other ant. The worker then started to drink the honey again, and she ended up showing her sister where the honey was so that she could start drinking the honey for herself. Pretty soon, both of the workers started drinking from the droplet of honey at the same time, and it wouldn't be very long before both of their gasters were completely full of it and the droplet was gone. It didn't take very long before the news of the honey spread to the queen, and she was eagerly awaiting one of the workers to start to feed her. You can tell by this clip that the queen was really enjoying the honey that this worker was giving her. She must have been pretty hungry, and I'm sure that by the end of this feeding, she will consider giving this worker a well-deserved promotion. In this clip especially, you can see how beautiful the queen's coloration is, and once this colony starts to have majors, they will show some of the same characteristics as the queen does, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing that. After about a week, the larva that was in the test tube had then pupated and was now a cocoon, scheduled to hatch into a worker in a couple of weeks. The queen had also laid an egg, which was a very amazing sign, and now my hopes are very high for this colony. Another couple of weeks had went by, and one day I went to check up on this colony and feed them, and I saw that the new worker had hatched. I can also see that the colony now has a few more eggs. I think there's about 4 now in total. And obviously, this was all very great news for this colony, and I'm very optimistic and I'm pretty confident that this colony will survive and they will soon have more workers. Once there are a few more workers present in the colony, I will give you all an update on them, but until then, I just have to leave them in the dark and let them be. The next species that we are unboxing is a colony of Camponotus festinatus, which I unboxed recently and also slightly after the first colony. These ants are slightly larger than the other colony of Camponotus fragilis, and they are arguably even more vibrant. You can see that this colony currently is pretty small. They only have around 5 workers, but they have brood in every single stage of development. There was a worker that recently eclosed, and there is also a pupa that will pretty soon eclose into a 6th worker. Getting closer, you can see that the colony's brood pile looks pretty healthy. There are a couple of eggs, a pupa, a few larger larvae, and quite a few smaller ones. And by the looks of it, this colony will be at around 10 to 15 workers relatively soon, and at that point I will give them a small outworld so that they can forage. But for now though, I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the other colony, and give this colony a housewarming gift in the form of some nectar in their test tube. And also, just like the Camponotus fragilis, this colony immediately started drinking the nectar as well. You can see that even the newly enclosed worker, whose exoskeleton still hadn't hardened yet, also came to check it out. Pretty soon, in the next day or so, her exoskeleton will harden as well, and soon she will be unrecognizable from the rest of the ants in her colony. The nectar was such a hit that every single worker at one point went to check it out, and the queen was left all by herself. That is, until the newly enclosed worker realized that she couldn't do much and started going back to tend to the queen. Neither of these colonies need to hibernate in the winter, which means that they will grow year-round, and I am very excited for both of these colonies to grow larger. You can see that just like the other colony earlier in the video, that when these ants start to drink the honey, their gasters also start to turn the same color. You can also see in this clip that the insides of the larvae are also green, and this can prove pretty useful to see if your colony has been feeding the larvae or if they need to be fed more food. I find it very fascinating that I can feed these ants any color of nectar that I want, and the workers' bodies will start to turn that respective color. Because this colony has so many larvae present in the nest, I thought it would be a good idea to feed them a piece of a mealworm. When you feed a small colony like this, it is best to feed them small pieces that do not include the head of the mealworm. This is because any movement from the mealworm, whether it's dead or alive, could cause this colony unnecessary stress. In this clip, you can see that I placed the mealworm on the piece of cotton. I did this on purpose, because once the colony is done with the mealworm, I can easily remove it from the test tube, and then I can replace the piece of cotton at the end of the test tube, which makes it much easier to keep the colony's living space clean, and it also causes the colony a lot less stress. This is the colony about a week later. At this point, a few of the larvae had started to develop, and the queen had laid a few more eggs. You can also see that this colony now has 6 workers, and if you look closely, you can see which of the workers had recently hatched, due to her exoskeleton having not hardened yet. I am going to keep both of these colonies in a test tube until they reach around 10 to 15 workers, and then once it's hard to feed them in the test tube, I will attach them to a small outworld, and then I will start feeding them in there. I will also attach a second test tube to the outworld at this time. This way, once their current one runs out of water, they will have more space to move into. Until then, I'll let these colonies grow in peace, and I will update you all once there is more news to share about them. I really hope that you all enjoyed this week's video. If you did, and if you think I deserve it, please leave a like on the video and subscribe. When I reach 5,000 subscribers, I will make a full ant room tour video where I feature every single ant colony that I have, including some ant species that I've never before featured on the channel. And with all of that said, again, I hope that you all enjoyed this week's video. I hope that you all have a great day, and until next time, peace.